Hello, friends. The 879th day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. The Russian Defense Ministry claims that Russian troops have captured the villages of Pischany and Andriivka in the Svatovy section of the Kharkiv direction. Ukraine has not officially confirmed this. At the same time, the enemy has posted a video from the central part of Pischany where they are calmly walking and hanging out their flag. The Ukrainian military telegram channel, Deep State, writes that the Russians were spotted near the monument to the Red Army soldier in the central part of the settlement. The line of contact is being clarified. If it turns out that the village is captured, then before the defense grouping on the eastern bank of the Oskil is cut off, there will be a field and the settlement of Kolesnikivka, the telegram channel writes. As for Andriivka, Deep State does not confirm the capture, but shows the advance of the Russians here. South of Stelmakivka, the enemy's advance is recorded along 3 forest belts east of Andriivka and Misizharivka to a depth of up to 1.75 kilometers. I would like to note that information is coming in about the enemy's movement and concentration in the Svatovy area, as well as in the Kurakhove area. Because of this, it can be assumed that most likely in the near future, there will be a more massive assault from the enemy on this section of the front. In the Siversk direction, Russian troops captured Rostelivka north of Soldar, Deep State reported. The Russian Defense Ministry announced the capture of this village back in late June, but other sources did not confirm this. The situation with the village of Ivano-Dorivka in this direction is quite strange. On July 17, the enemy published footage of a flag being installed in the central part of the village. Ukrainian experts reported that a day later, Russian war correspondents published footage of a rocket artillery strike on this area, reporting that the eastern part of the village was under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces. At the same time, Western experts are recording Russian advances near the village, and the American Institute for the Study of War indicates Ivano-Dorivka on its map as being under Russian control. In the Bakhmut direction, Deep State reports the advance of Russians in the direction of Gregorivka north of Kalinivka. There are also reports that Russians are attempting to cross the Siversky Donetsk-Donbas channel in the Kalinivka area. In the Donetsk direction, Russian troops have advanced in Pivdeny, Ukrainian experts report. They have also advanced in the village of Zelensky, beyond which Donetsk itself begins. In New York, the enemy is advancing in the northern direction. In the Pokrovsk direction, Deep State confirmed the loss of the village of Prowers, which was previously reported by the Russians as well as Western analysts. The Telegram channel writes that the battles for Prowers have been going on since the end of April, but the Russians managed to turn the tide there in the last 2 days. The village was abandoned on July 19 by one of the infantry brigades, which could not withstand the Russian attack. Then the Ukrainian armed forces brought units of another, already mechanized brigade to the western outskirts of the settlement, but due to a lack of forces, it also withdrew from its positions on July 20. A railway line to Pokrovsk goes through Prowers. The military telegram channel believes that after losing the village, the brigade standing along the railway will be forced to deploy its positions to the flank as well. In addition, there is a risk of encirclement, and there is no order to align the line. The enemy's further advance has 2 goals at once. The first is to approach or cut the Pokrovsk-Kostiantynivka highway. In addition, there is a height 229 to the west of Vostvedenka. The second is to move along the ridge along which the railway goes, followed by an exit to a height of 224 and Novogrodivka, writes Deep State. South of Lozavatsky and northeast of Prowers, the enemy advanced along 2 forest belts to a depth of 500 meters. In Novoslivka Persha, fighting continues for the southern part of the village, where the enemy has partial success. Further south, the enemy has advanced along the forest belt east of Nevelsky, where drone operators of the Ukrainian armed forces attacked enemy infantry with drops at the crossroads. In the Kurakhove direction, in Krasnohorovka, fighting continues for the northern part of the city. The situation here remains very difficult, as Russian troops have deployed additional forces to carry out attacks. Meanwhile, Zelensky said in an interview with the BBC that the hot stage of the war could end by the end of the year, and not all of Ukraine's territories can be returned by military means. I believe that if we unite and follow, for example, the peace summit format, we can end the hot stage of the war. We can try to do this by the end of this year, he said. In the same interview, earlier, Zelensky admitted that the war would end diplomatically, not militarily. This does not mean that all territories are recaptured by force. I think that the power of diplomacy can help, the president said. He also spoke in favor of negotiations with Russia within the framework of the peace summit. If a plan is ready at the second peace summit, if Russia is ready to discuss this plan and agree on ending the war, then we will be ready to talk with representatives of Russia, and it makes no difference whether it is Putin or not. What difference does it make? If the world is united around Ukraine, we will talk with those who decide everything in Russia, Zelensky said. Let me remind you that the Ukrainian president banned negotiations with Putin by his own decree, which has not yet been cancelled. The fact that Ukraine has started talking about negotiations is connected with the difficult situation at the front and uncertainty about the future support of the West, writes CNN. The publication points out that the Ukrainian president was initially against negotiations with Russia before the withdrawal of its troops from Ukraine, and then declared the need to invite Russia to the second peace summit without observing this condition. At the front, Russia's creeping advance is forcing Ukraine to conduct defensive operations rather than prepare for a counteroffensive. Meanwhile, in the West, questions arise about the readiness of the United States and Germany to continue pouring resources into the conflict. Former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine John Herbst believes that Zelensky's change in tone is a reaction to the fact that Trump announced his running mate J.D. Vance, a staunch critic of Ukraine's support. Perhaps Zelensky is trying to reach out to a potential future Trump administration by emphasizing that he is ready to negotiate as long as the deal on the table is fair, writes CNN, citing Herbst. Herbst named Ukraine's admission to NATO following the conflict as one of the criteria for justice and stable peace. At the same time, he believes that Kyiv could legitimately talk about winning this war, even if Ukraine fails to regain all of its pre-war territory. That is, in the West, the most convinced supporters of Ukraine seem to believe that Ukraine will not be able to emerge from this war without territorial losses, as well as the fact that the Trump administration, if he wins the election, will move Ukraine toward this version of peace. For example, Trump's former national security advisor John Bolton said that his former boss will lead to concessions to Russia that will be devastating for Ukraine. Trump himself, as well as his ally vice presidential candidate Vance, made characteristic statements on this matter. At a campaign rally in Michigan, Trump, who the day before had spoken on the phone with Zelensky and promised him a deal on Ukraine, repeated that he would end the war even before officially taking office. Even before I take the Oval Office, shortly after we win the presidential election, I will resolve this terrible military conflict between Russia and Ukraine. I am the only one who can make such a statement. I will prevent World War III, Trump said. Vance in turn called not to drag America into every conflict on the other side of the globe. Sometimes it's just none of our business and we should stay out of it. There's nothing wrong with that, it's just common sense, the senator said. Friends, this channel exists solely thanks to your support. If you have the opportunity and desire to support the channel, I will be very grateful to you. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.